Flowers of Evil is essentially a coming-of-age story, though it's not exactly your typical coming-of-age story. It explores the negative aspects and also some of the positive ones, but more so, it seems, the darker side of adolescence and being a teenager. The story basically starts off with our protagonist Kasuga being interested in the popular girl at school, Saeki, and basically after school ending up stealing her gym clothes. Of course, he comes across them by accident when he forgets something in his classroom, ends up stealing her gym clothes, and is spotted by probably the weirdest girl at school, or the outcast at school, essentially, who nobody really talks to, Nakamura. Nakamura spots him doing this, and then of course, after she spots him later, ends up admitting that she spotted him stealing Saeki's gym clothes. And of course, it doesn't matter that the next day Kasuga brings the gym clothes back. Nakamura is basically holding this over his head and threatens that if he does not go along with her crazy plans and ideas, that she's going to tell everybody at school that Kasuga stole Saeki's gym clothes and did God knows what with them. So this is basically what starts off the story, and from here it goes into a spiral of just batshit insanity, let's just say. This manga sort of jumps around from being a love triangle story to a story with the theme of kind of forgiving and forgetting in a way, or just, trying to look past the bad things you've done in the past and becoming an adult, essentially. The first half of the story, of course, has to do with Kasuga going along with Nakamura's crazy ideas. Kasuga actually, of course, is interested in the popular girl Saeki, and does eventually ask her out to accompany him to a library one day, and this sort of starts off their relationship, and we eventually find out that in a sort of ironic plot twist that Saeki feels not only the same way that Kasuga does about her, but she also in a way sort of starts to become obsessed with him in a really unhealthy way, let's just say. Now, with Nakamura sort of blackmailing Kasuga into doing these crazy things, Kasuga is sort of having to do these more and more extreme things for Nakamura, lest she tell everybody that Kasuga has stolen Saeki's gym clothes and that he's basically a pervert. And he does not want to be labeled that, because then he'd basically be an outcast probably for the rest of his life. The manga kind of explores the theme of, well, what is a pervert? What does it mean to be an outcast? Or what exactly do we consider weird? Where do we really draw the line with that? But of course, things begin to escalate with what Nakamura wants Kasuga to do. Then this sort of leads to Kasuga admitting to what's been going on between him and Nakamura, and what he actually did with Saeki's gym clothes. But of course, in another weird ironic twist, this only leads things to get more and more crazy, because Saeki, not only forgives him for this, but she just becomes more and more obsessed with Kasuga. Now, I don't want to spoil too much more of what happens in the manga, but let's just say the story just gets crazier from there as things continue to spiral out of control with what Nakamura wants Kasuga to do. And at a certain point in the story, Kasuga also starts to just start to enjoy himself with what he's doing for Nakamura, even though he doesn't really have to do it anymore. At some point, it becomes more so him doing it for her sake, and him just trying to, in a way, sort of just not only go along with what she's doing, but in a way, I guess, trying to quote-unquote save her from her own suffering or from herself. As we find out at the very end of the story, Nakamura, and I think it's pretty obvious for anybody reading, has quite a few issues, and it really comes across as Kasuga indulging her own mental issues and sort of just in a way enabling her, which, if he wanted to save her, is not really the best thing to do. So around the halfway point in the story, he just becomes really unlikable. But after this part of the story and a sort of short little time skip, Kasuga, after really, looking back on his actions and really regretting them, starts to become a lot more likable again. But as I looked back on, what I had read in the manga and Kasuga's character, I realized that this was sort of, in a way, like a reflection of kind of, yourself as a teenager. You are going to make stupid decisions and you are going to do stupid things. And it just so happened that what Kasuga did and the mistakes he made ended up making not only him look bad, but a lot of other people look bad in the process and nearly kill somebody. So it's something that he's going to basically have to live with for the rest of his life. So from that, later on in the story, there is this overall theme of just basically just moving on and trying to accept what happened and sort of just living with it, owning what you did and trying to become better from it. I really kind of identified in a way with what was actually happening to him in the story, and because when I first read it, I was like, I really don't like him. I really don't like what he's doing here. But then when I look back on it, I'm like, well, isn't that just everybody as a teenager? We're all stupid and we all make these dumb decisions because we're young and we're impulsive and we don't think things through, and that's kind of the main overarching theme in a large portion of the story, with just making these dumb decisions that are going to end up affecting you really negatively affecting you later on. At the time you think that you're doing something, well, at least in Kasuga's case, you think you're doing something good for that person when really it's detrimental to both of you. I don't want to really spoil anything, but that's kind of the gist of how the story goes. Of course, it kind of goes without saying, the art done by Shuzo Oshimi, and also, of course, the story is breathtaking. Like, some of it is just really crazy, psychedelic, and I really like that about his art. It's something that I think is really unique to him. It's something that you can't really get with a lot of other manga, except maybe, I guess you could say, Tokyo Ghoul in some instances, but Shuzo Oshima just has this really distinctive art style. I could not put this manga down. Like, I just had to keep reading, and it did not take me long to get through every volume of it, because Oshimi, while his art is also amazing, he's also a master of just cliffhangers and kind of leaving you on the edge of your seat throughout the story. Just nothing really ever slows down. It only continues to progress and get more and more crazy. I actually read a lot more into the manga Happiness before I ended up finishing Flowers of Evil, and that's definitely something you see prevalent in Happiness, maybe even more so than Flowers of Evil, but that's mainly because Happiness is just this constant wave of tragedy and just bad things happening to each character. No character is really invulnerable in that story. But with Flowers of Evil, it's somewhat that, but also just you want to see what's going to happen to each of these characters. And of course, there are new characters that show up after the little time skip in the story that I did not think I would end up liking as much as I did. But even characters that just kind of show up in the halfway points end up getting, a lot of development. I actually ended up liking them quite a bit. It kind of has these elements of sort of everything you would expect from a coming-of-age story, but it's just the characters and the general themes of Flowers of Evil that just kind of want to get you to really keep reading it. There is that romance aspect of it, though, and I was not sure how the story was going to end. I wasn't sure if this was going to be a bittersweet ending or if this was going to be a happy ending or just downright depressing. I will not say what kind of ending it has, because of course there is a lot I don't want to spoil with this, because I do think a lot of people should read this manga. It does have an ending that I was overall very satisfied with. Like I said, I wasn't really sure who Kasuga was going to end up with by the end of it, and I actually was trying in my head going through like which girl I think is best girl, honestly. Like I was starting to actually get that invested with the story. There's not really too much to say about this. It has a very similar atmosphere to if you were to read Happiness. Happiness is more dark, horror-oriented atmosphere, but this one kind of at times has sort of, I don't know if I'd say a horror theme to it, but just like a really weird. I mean, of course, the overall themes of the story are a little bit strange with the flower, the flower you see basically being, of course, all symbolic, kind of representing, I guess, I'm not exactly sure, mischievousness or just basically. I guess specifically teenage mischievousness and just kind of getting up to no good, basically, to put it simply, is kind of, I guess you could say, sort of a horror-esque thing when you see it because it looks so creepy. But apparently the name itself is based on a story by Baudelaire, which is constantly referenced in the manga, and it's also referenced, how much Kasuga likes that story and how he's sort of a bookworm, I guess. He loves to read, and Baudelaire and the Flowers of Evil is like one of his favorite stories, but of course after some of the events that happen in the manga, he really can't pick up that story again. And it kind of made me want to go and actually read that, because maybe if I read that, I would actually understand Flowers of Evil a bit more. There are some things that go on in Flowers of Evil that really aren't entirely clear, and maybe would be cleared up if you were to read Baudelaire's Flowers of Evil. I'm not exactly sure. I would definitely say this isn't for everyone either, because there are some things here that I think would turn some people off. I did have a lot of fun reading it. I think that it is a really amazing story. I would almost go as far as to say this is probably one of my favorite manga, or one of the best manga I've ever read. I would say that regardless, I think you should read it, because I think there probably is something you could end up liking here, but there are some things in about the halfway point of the story that you will probably kind of piss you off, because of how far some of the characters go in terms of how crazy they get, and how far they're willing to go for one another in certain ways. Let's just say that. Regardless, I really did enjoy this manga, and I just wanted to make this I wanted to make a video basically talking about it. I did do a first impressions of Shuzo Oshimi's Happiness, and this is another story by him, and I just finished reading it, so I did have quite a bit to say about it, but of course a lot of what I have to say is basically spoilers, so I don't really want to get into that. So I tried to be as vague as possible, sort of outlining what's happening in the story and basically talking about it in general. Yeah, I think that people should definitely read it, even though it is at first it is sort of different in terms of, like I said, a coming of age story, but it is really good, and there are a lot of themes that I think most people could relate to, because we've all been teenagers at one point, and we've all made stupid decisions, and that kind of is a prevalent theme throughout this. So I think if you could probably relate to a lot of it. But that all being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's another sort of manga review video, like a Kaos' reading corner. I wanted to do more of these videos, just sort of giving commentary instead of just doing just kind of doing it in front of a camera and showing off the manga itself. Let me know what you guys think about this format. Do you like it better than me just kind of sitting in front of a camera and talking, or do you prefer just my voice over some images? Let me know, and I guess until next time, I'll see you all later.